So, when I made the channel, I already had a collection of videos to debunk. But as I was getting some music to play in the background while I debunk another one, I found a video by Fact Reality called Science Has Found Proof of the Existence of God. So I checked it out for obvious reasons, and I got 5 minutes and 30 seconds into it before I'm like, I gotta make this into a video like right now. So I'll get right into it.
So here's the question. Has science discovered God?
No.
Well, Einstein didn't believe it was possible. But Stephen Hawking said it might be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. So, what discovery has baffled the greatest scientific minds of the past century, and why has it caused them to rethink the origin of our universe? Well, new and more powerful telescopes have unlocked mysteries about our universe never before revealed, giving us amazing new scientific insight into the origin of life.
So you're claiming that astronomy has solved the problem of abiogenesis. Oh, this is gonna be great. Oh, that's not what you're claiming? Because, I've seen about 5 minutes into the video. Yeah, you're talking out of your ass here, dude. The origin of the universe and the origin of life are different. Speak clearly next time.
Has science discovered God? But wait a minute. Hasn't science proven we don't need God to explain the universe? What is it about this discovery that is so fundamentally different, and why has it stunned the scientific world?
Probably the number of creationists misusing it.
Well, this discovery, along with what molecular biologists have learned about the sophisticated coding within DNA, have many scientists now admitting that the universe and life itself appear to be part of a grand design.
Citation, please.
One cosmologist put it this way: many scientists, when they admit their views, incline toward the design argument.
Citation, please.
Surprisingly, many scientists who are now talking about God have no religious belief whatsoever.
Citation, please.
So, what are these stunning discoveries that have scientists suddenly speaking of God? Well, there are three revolutionary discoveries from the fields of astronomy and molecular biology that really stand out. One, the universe had a beginning. Two, the universe is just right for life. And three, DNA coding reveals intelligence.
Okay, so I can confirm right now that the way he's representing the information is completely wrong. But because I'm a debunk channel, not a science channel or whatever, I'll do it as he brings the points up and actually explains them.
The statements leading scientists have made about these discoveries may shock you. Let's take a look. The universe had a one-time beginning. Since the dawn of civilization, man has gazed in awe at the stars, wondering what they are and how they got there. Although on a clear night the unaided human eye can see only about 6,000 stars, Hubble and other powerful telescopes reveal there are a billion trillion stars clustered in over 100 billion galaxies. In fact, our sun is like one grain of sand amidst the world's beaches.
All right, credit where credit is due. He does have a lot of accurate science in his videos. But he's framing the universe as mysterious when it's not. Well, not in the sense he's using. We know where the stars came from. We know what they are. We know what they do. We know how they're moving. All that. But he's framing it as if the universe isn't known to us, which it is. I'll let that slide for now, though, because most people aren't as well as formed.
But prior to the 20th century, the majority of scientists believed our own Milky Way galaxy was the entire universe, and that only about 100 million stars existed. Most scientists of the past believed that our universe never had a beginning. They believed that mass, space, and energy that compose our entire universe had always existed. But in the early 20th century, astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is expanding. Rewinding the process mathematically, he calculated that everything in the universe, including matter, energy, space, and even time itself, actually had a beginning. Well, shockwaves hit the scientific community. Many scientists, including Einstein, reacted negatively. In what Einstein later called the biggest blunder of my life, he fudged the equations to avoid the implication that the universe had a beginning. Well, perhaps the most vocal adversary of the idea that the universe had a beginning was British astronomer Sir Frederick Hoyle, who sarcastically nicknamed the creation event a Big Bang. He stubbornly held to his steady-state theory that the universe had always existed. Well, so did Einstein and other scientists until the evidence for a beginning became overwhelming. The logical conclusion was like the proverbial elephant in the room, namely that something or someone beyond scientific investigation.
You revealed your hand, con man. Anyway, jokes aside, he does actually bring up a kind of a point here, except he's also wrong. See, a point of infinite density, which is what would have created the Big Bang, experiences time infinitely fast, which would also explain why it exploded. If there's a chance it'll happen across infinite time. So, boom. Anyway, since it's infinitely old, instantly, that also means it's eternal. So, it wasn't created. The point of infinite density doesn't have to have a creator, just as God doesn't, because he's supposedly eternal. Oh shit, did I actually just disprove the greatest claim to God?
Then finally, in 1992, the COBE satellite experiments proved that the universe really did have a one-time beginning in an incredible flash of light and energy. Although some scientists called it the moment of creation, most preferred referring to it as the Big Bang. Astronomer Robert Jastrow tries to help us imagine how it all began. The picture suggests the explosion of a cosmic hydrogen bomb. The instant in which the cosmic bomb exploded marked the birth of the universe. So the conclusion is, everything in the universe came from nothing.
No, the conclusion is that the universe came from a point of infinite density, and which contained a bunch of energy, which, thanks to E equals mc squared, also equals mass, which, when it spread out, it became the universe.
Science is unable to tell us what or who caused the universe to begin, but some believe it clearly points to a creator.
Because science is just a bunch of baseless assertions, isn't it, Mr. Creationist?
Well, British theorist Edward Milne wrote a mathematical treatise on relativity, which concluded by saying, as to the first cause of the universe, in the context of expansion, that is left to the reader to insert, but our picture is incomplete without him.
Oh, gee, choosing a creationist scientist who claims that God did everything. Because, they would totally say something different.
Another British scientist, Edmund Whittaker, attributed the beginning of our universe to divine will constituting nature from nothingness. Many scientists were struck by the parallel of a one-time creation event from nothing with the biblical creation account in Genesis 1:1.
Because that's the literal interpretation of Genesis, which also says that the universe is 6,000 years old. And that a global flood happened and a ton of other things. If you're going to pick something as literal just because it's in the Bible, then you have to use everything in that as literal. At least that book as literal. Unless it's otherwise directly confirmed to be a metaphor, which the story of Noah definitely wasn't. And the Big Bang Theory itself requires a multi-billion year universe, which clearly isn't the case with the literal interpretation.
Prior to this discovery, many scientists regard the biblical account of creation from nothing as unscientific. Although he called himself an agnostic, Robert Jastrow was compelled by the evidence to admit, now we see how the astronomical evidence leads to a biblical view of the origin of the world.
It describes the universe accurately how? The Big Bang can't describe a 6,000-year-old snow globe, which is what the Bible basically claims the universe is, thanks to the firmament, and the flat Earth, the circle of Earth, along with the stars being pinned in the sky, which is not, mostly because, they're moving at stupid high speeds away from us, and a bunch of other nonsense. Like, none of this makes sense. Where's your argument coming from?
Another similar statement came from agnostic George Smoot, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist in charge of the Kobe experiment. He put it like this: there is no doubt that a parallel exists between the Big Bang as an event and the Christian notion of creation from nothing.
Oh, goody. Another quote, and one that doesn't actually make sense because the Big Bang wasn't creation from nothing. It was creation from something. A very huge difference between those two, really.
Scientists who used to scoff at the Bible's account of creation are now admitting that the biblical concept of creation from nothing has been right all along. Cosmologists who specialize in the study of the universe and its origins soon realized that a chance cosmic explosion could never bring about life any more than a nuclear bomb would, unless it was precisely engineered to do so.
And are you going to provide the method for which they reached that conclusion? No, of course you're not. Because they didn't. I know for a fact that cosmology has not concluded that God is a necessity. Otherwise, the 92% atheist scientific community would have seen a drastic decline, because there are a lot of cosmologists. And the cosmologists actually have less creationists in them than other fields, with the possible exception in evolutionary biology, for obvious reasons. But where are you getting this from? Who says this? Cite your sources. Jesus Christ. And yes, I'm using the name of your Lord in vain.
And that meant a designer must have planned it. They began using words like super intellect, creator, and even supreme being to describe this designer.
Provide me one scientific paper from any reputable cosmologist that wasn't a creationist before that uses any of those words.
Why is this? Because the universe is finely tuned for life.
Nope.
Physicists calculated that for life to exist, gravity and the other laws of physics that govern our universe needed to be intricately tuned just right, or our universe couldn't exist.
Okay, so the fine-tuning argument has been debunked like a billion times, mostly by pointing out that the universe isn't finely tuned for life, that it's horribly tuned for life. But I'm just gonna bring up one point here. He mentions the gravitational constant, but scientists have actually proved, and I'll try and find a source to cite this because this is actually a fairly bold claim, that it can't be anything else. The value of the gravitational constant can't be different than what it is. So yes, even if it was different by a billionth of a decimal point, life as we know it couldn't exist. Our universe couldn't exist. It would have either collapsed or expanded too fast for anything to really matter. But it can't be anything else, so whoop-de-doo. As for a lot of other constants, they're based on each other. And if life wasn't able to exist, hey, would we be able to realize it wasn't finely tuned for us? No. Like, there's so many ways to get rid of this argument. They really need to stop using this.
For instance, did you know that if the expansion rate of the universe had been slightly weaker, gravity would have pulled all matter back into a big crunch? We're not talking about merely a 1 or 2% reduction in the universe's expansion rate. Well, Stephen Hawking writes, if the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, the universe would have recollapsed before it ever reached its present size.
Nice job quoting Stephen Hawking. Actually, that's a surprisingly reputable source for you to use. But there's a problem with what you're saying. How do you know there wasn't a big crunch? Two big crunches. 5, 1,000, a million, 17 quintillion, infinity. Like, if a big crunch happens, then it would form another point of infinite density. So it'd be able to go big, boom, again, form a universe. And there's no reason it couldn't do that over and over and over again until it formed a universe that wasn't going to have a big crunch, which it doesn't look like ours is going to. So what's the problem? Yes, there wasn't a big crunch, which would have killed the universe in this iteration of the universe. But there's no evidence that there weren't prior ones, so your argument is meaningless.
Well, on the flip side, if the expansion rate had been a mere fraction greater than it was, well, all galaxies, stars, and planets could never have formed, and we wouldn't be here.
Hey, you're right. We wouldn't be here to realize that we weren't there.
And for life to exist, the conditions in our solar system and our own planet also need to be just right.
And you're basing this assertion off what? What conditions? So far, scientists have only actually figured out two. That it needs to have a source of heat, generally the sun, and if there is a sun, then it needs to be in the, Goldilocks zone, which is actually massive. People try and claim that it was like 1% of the Earth closer or further away we die. No. And it needs to have water, which is abundant because it's made out of oxygen and hydrogen, two of the most abundant elements.
For example, we all realize that without an atmosphere of oxygen, none of us would be able to breathe. And without oxygen, water couldn't exist. Without water, there would be no rainfall for our crops.
Okay, I want you to go get a textbook and read about chemosynthesizing bacteria and the time when it's likely they originated. You know why? Because there wasn't oxygen in the atmosphere as we know it, but there was life. Do you know why? Because there was an ocean. Even without the ozone layer, which didn't exist because that's made of oxygen, things were able to live at the bottom of the ocean, which led to the creation of a cyanobacteria, from a photosynthesizing bacteria, which could create oxygen from carbon dioxide, which was quite abundant. And you know what they did? Almost killed all life. Fortunately, they went extinct, but the creation of oxygen almost killed everything. I don't think you understand what life needs, and that everything that's happening on this planet has been disaster after disaster. There is no stability, there is no safety, and we are not the epitome of life. Anything we can survive in, I guarantee a ton of other things can survive in. But you know what we can't? Space. Oh, wait, there are things that can survive in space. How about 1,000 degrees Celsius temperatures? Oh, wait, there are things that can survive that. How about negative 250 degrees Celsius? Or I think that's 23 Kelvin. Oh, yeah, no, there are things that survive that. Not moving. I mean, they're like frozen. But they're alive. They'll survive when they're thawed. Like, I really don't get this argument. Do you think we are the basis of all life? That everything we need, all life needs? Because that's stupid. There are an unbelievable number of things that we need that other things don't.
Other elements such as hydrogen, nitrogen, sodium, carbon, calcium, and phosphorus are also essential for life.
Except that astronomy has explained where all those came from ages ago without the need of a god. And if a God truly was involved, why would he make natural processes to explain this? Like, if God wanted to prove his existence to people through his creation, he should just do something that's impossible and have it happen continuously all the time. He wouldn't need a book because we'd recognize its existence. If he had a will, he could beam it into our heads or display it on holographic projections that appear in front of everyone. There is no need for what you're doing for an omnipotent being. If he's able to create all those elements and design them perfectly, he should not be unknown. His prayers from us would be meaningless, and nothing we do would matter. I had to get that out of my system. Anyway, the argument is pointless, and if God is going to such effort to provide a natural explanation for the universe, then it's easier to ignore God and simply say it's a natural universe. We see no evidence of him. Even if there is a God, it's not your God. I can disprove the literal interpretation of the Bible in so many areas. So can a whole bunch of other people. The fact that you ignore this and claim that your God is true rather than a non-interventionist prime mover, which is the only God that I can see existing, is asinine.
But that alone is not all that's needed for life to exist. The size, temperature, relative proximity, and chemical makeup of our planet, sun, and moon also need to be just right.
Realistically speaking, none of the things you just mentioned are actually all that sensitive.
And there are dozens of other conditions that needed to be exquisitely fine-tuned, or we wouldn't be here to think about it.
Yay, he debunked his own argument. A round of applause, everyone.
Scientists who believe in God may have expected such fine-tuning, but atheists and agnostics were unable to explain the remarkable, quote-unquote, coincidences.
That's because they are coincidences, and there's no need to explain coincidences. And you're also wrong, because many of those have been explained, such as the gravitational constant, the lack of sensitivity in the chemical composition of the Earth, the Moon, the placement of the Sun, and so many other things. You're lying here. Lying.
Theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, an agnostic, writes, "The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life."
Nice job quoting Stephen Hawking for a quote that I can't find anywhere, and you don't cite. Yay!
It all brings us to one question. The universe, accident or miracle? But couldn't this fine-tuning be attributed to chance? After all, odds makers know that even long shots can eventually win at the racetrack, and against heavy odds, lotteries are eventually won by someone. So, what are the odds against human life existing by chance from a random explosion in cosmic history?
Look, if you go back far enough, the odds of any one thing happening are astronomical. The odds of me using these words and these exact timings to create this video, as seen from the perspective of someone before I started debunking this video, would be basically zero. But it happened. That's how probability works. Get over it.
Well, for human life to be possible from a big bang utterly defies the laws of probability.
The only way that could be true is if the odds of humans being created was zero.
One astronomer calculates the odds at less than one chance in a trillion.
So, not zero.
In other words, it would be far easier for a blindfolded person in one try to discover one specially marked grain of sand out of all the beaches of the world. Look at it this way. The odds of one random Big Bang producing life as we know it would be like one person winning over 1,000 consecutive Mega Million Dollar lotteries after purchasing only a single ticket for each.
So, astronomically rare. We get it. That's how probability works when you go back far enough. But it happened. Sorry, I'm getting angry at this, but that's how probability works. I shouldn't need to explain this to an adult.
Not very likely? Really quite impossible, unless it was fixed by someone behind the scenes, which is what everyone would think.
If I went and took the list of every person who won the Mega Millions, and I just played it in front of you, and then they won in that order, it wouldn't mean I staged it. It would just mean something that rare happened. That's how things like this work. And if I went with a time machine for that same list, would you automatically believe I was a god? Really?
And that is what many scientists are concluding. Someone behind the scenes designed and created the universe.
Citation.
Well, this new understanding of how miraculous human life is in our universe led the agnostic astronomer George Greenstein to ask, is it possible that suddenly, without intending to, we've stumbled upon the scientific proof of the existence of a supreme being? However, as an agnostic, Greenstein maintains his faith in science rather than a creator to ultimately explain our origins.
Oh, so cosmology doesn't definitively prove there's a god, which is something you claimed earlier. Good to know, I'll just keep that in mind.
Robert Jastrow explains why some scientists are reluctant to accept a transcendent creator. He says, there is a kind of religion in science. It is the religion of a person who believes there is order and harmony in the universe. This religious faith of the scientists is violated by the discovery that the world had a beginning under conditions in which the known laws of physics are not valid, and as a product of forces or circumstances we cannot discover.
We know what the Big Bang is. We know what it did. We know the results of it. We might not know why it happened, or the exact mechanism that caused it to happen, but that doesn't matter. If I have a computer, like the one I'm using right now, and I know what it does, I know what it can do, and I understand like the software behind it, I don't have to know the hardware in order to say how those things work. That's essentially what this argument is. We can make theories and hypotheses and all this other nonsense about the universe without understanding the basis of it. We've been doing that for years. And God needn't be the cause. Just because something isn't a permanent blank doesn't mean God. It means blank. Null does not equal zero.
When that happens, the scientist has lost control. If you really examine the implications, he would be traumatized. Well, it's understandable why scientists like Greenstein and Hawking seek other explanations rather than attribute our finely tuned universe to a creator.
Because why would you attribute something that's not there to something that isn't there?
Hawking speculates that other unseen and unprovable universes may exist, increasing the odds that one of them, like ours, is perfectly fine-tuned for life.
Perfectly fine-tuned for life as we know it. And you're not even debunking an actual theory, you're debunking a hypothesis by one guy. That's not even like the working theory we're running with. I don't know why you're going like this. Makes no sense.
However, since his proposal is speculative and outside of verification, it can hardly be called scientific. Although he's also an agnostic, British astrophysicist Paul Davies dismisses Hawking's idea as too speculative.
Oh, so you do know that you were debunking a straw man.
He writes, such a belief must rest on faith rather than observation. Although Hawking continues leading the charge to explore purely scientific explanations for our origins, other scientists, including many agnostics, have acknowledged what appears to be overwhelming evidence for a creator.
You know, it's kind of embarrassing how often I have to ask you for citations, and the fact that you have none.
Astronomer Frederick Hoyle wrote, "A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature."
Oh, goody, another cherry-picked quote. What an argument.
Although Einstein wasn't religious and didn't believe in a personal God, he called the genius behind the universe an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection.
Yeah, quoting Einstein, that's totally... Can I stop addressing quotes now? I I'm just gonna cut them out in the future, if this is his only argument.
Atheist Christopher Hitchens, who spent much of his life writing and debating against the existence of God, was most perplexed by the fact that life couldn't exist if things were different by just 1 degree or 1 hair.
Gee, a scientist was wrong. What do you know? You see, the problem is life as we know it can't exist. I studied this before, but there are other forms of life that could exist. If the physics were different, another form of life could exist. And even under the physics we know, silicon-based life is possible. There's the potential for computer-based life. There's different forms of bacterial life that could theoretically exist. I mean, you're just wrong here, and so is the guy you're quoting. Stop it.
But astronomy is not the only area where science has discovered evidence for design. There is another discovery, DNA, the language of life. As recent as 1953, molecular biologists discovered intricately complex design in the microscopic world of DNA.
Sorry, did you say design in DNA? Or did you say a natural process that creates what looks like design in DNA, which is what evolution and mutation is?
This tiny molecule has been called the brains behind each cell in our body, as well as every other living thing. Yet the more they discover about DNA, the more amazed they are at the brilliance behind it.
You realize that people can recognize the brilliance of something without needing a designer to make that brilliance happen? Like, I can recognize the brilliance in a formation of rocks that I'm looking at, that we're talking like roughly 5 pounds total of rocks just distributed around a hill that looks particularly pleasant to walk on. I can admire that and the brilliance of the design, except it's just the brilliance of how it happened.
Scientists who believe the material world is all that exists, like Richard Dawkins, argue DNA evolved by natural selection without a creator. Yet even most ardent evolutionists admit that the origin of DNA's intricate complexity is unexplainable.
You literally just provided an explanation. Therefore, if those people are saying that, then they're stupid and don't deserve the degrees that they have in that field. I'm sorry to whoever you may actually be quoting, which I don't believe you're doing, but that's the case.
DNA's intricate complexity caused its co-discoverer, Francis Crick, to believe that it could never have originated on Earth naturally. Crick, an evolutionist, believed life is too complex to have originated on Earth and must have come from outer space.
Just as your belief without evidence is completely unsubstantiated and undue in the process of science, so is his. Just because he is an important man in the discovery of DNA does not excuse him from this fact.
The coding behind DNA reveals such intelligence that it staggers the imagination. A mere pinhead volume of DNA contains information equivalent to a stack of paperback books that would encircle the Earth 5,000 times. And DNA operates like a language with its own extremely complex software code. Microsoft founder Bill Gates says that the software of DNA is far, far more complex than any software we have ever developed.
Oh, look, an argument from incredulity. Because, that's never happened before. Yes, DNA is complex, but we have a realistic explanation of how DNA works, why it works, where most of it came about, and everything else you could possibly think of. Just because you can't comprehend it doesn't mean it's not the case.
Richard Dawkins and other evolutionary biologists believe that all this complexity originated through natural selection. Yet, as Crick, a Nobel Prize winner, remarked, natural selection could never have produced the first molecule.
While it's true that evolution doesn't explain the cause and creation of DNA, the first organisms would likely have relied on RNA, and RNA is self-replicating. So, since we've proven that RNA can be generated by natural processes, this is an irrelevant statement.
Many scientists believe that the coding within the DNA molecule points to an intelligence far exceeding what could have occurred by natural causes. In the early 21st century, noted atheist Anthony Flou's lifelong unbelief came to an abrupt end when he studied the remarkable intelligence behind DNA. Flou explains what changed his position. What I think the DNA material has done is to show that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinarily diverse elements together. The enormous complexity by which the results were achieved looked to me like the work of intelligence. It now seems to me that the finding of more than 50 years of DNA research have provided materials for a new and enormously powerful argument to design.
So, a cherry-picked example of someone coming to faith because of an argument of incredulity and an argument from ignorance is evidence. You still haven't provided anything that's actually evidence that has to point to your point of view,
All this scientific evidence
which he has provided absolutely none of.
leads us to honestly consider that life and the universe have the fingerprints of a creator. Are scientists now convinced that a creator has left his fingerprints on the universe? Although many scientists are still bent on squeezing God out of the universe, most recognize the religious implications of these new discoveries.
So 8% is most now?
In his book, The Grand Design, Stephen Hawking, who doesn't believe in a personal God, attempts to explain why the universe doesn't need God. Yet, when faced with the evidence, even Hawking has also admitted there must be religious overtones. But I think most scientists prefer to shy away from the religious side of it.
Oh joy! Quoting scientists as if that's actual science. Why not quote their papers and the actual science done rather than the people? Because people are fallible.
As an agnostic, world-renowned astronomer Robert Jastrow had no Christian agenda behind his conclusions. However, he freely acknowledges the compelling case for a creator.
So this time you're not even going to quote him. Yeah, people acknowledging that you may have an argument, and note that that's may, and argument doesn't mean solid case. It means nothing. You are not correct because you have an argument. I can argue with my parents that I shouldn't brush my teeth, should be able to eat sweet things all the time, and shouldn't shower and all this other nonsense. It wastes time, it doesn't taste as good, whatever. You know what that is? It's an argument. It doesn't mean I have a case, because there's more things to look at than just that one argument.
He writes of the shock and despair experienced by scientists who thought they had squeezed God out of their world.
And I make videos about the shock and awe of people who thought that they had written religion out of their lives, because all of them are ridiculous. I'm not saying that there isn't a God, because as I've said before, I you know, can't disprove God, and I don't actually have explanations for a lot of things. I mean, the scientific community at large probably does, and I just need to do research into it. Although at this time I'm a bit busy doing other things. However, I do have the active position that every religion currently proposed is wrong, with the possible exception of deism, if you count that as a religion, which I don't, because it's just the belief that there is an entity that started the universe.
These are his words. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak, and as he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries.
I'm sorry. Do you think that what you've said so far actually proves you're right? Because it doesn't. So far, you've explained a little bit of science, all of which the people you're quoting is fully aware of, and then basically quote mined a bunch of people, including Stephen Hawking, who actively disregards God as necessary for the Big Bang. Which, if it was true, which the person you've quoted 4 times now claims it to be, then your entire argument fails horribly. On top of that, theologians didn't know about the Big Bang. The Bible, in its literal interpretation, as you are using the words of to be, predicted a 6,000-year-old Earth, which is millions of times less than what we need.
So, what if, after all, there is a creator? If there is a superintelligent creator, the question arises, what is he like? Is he just some cosmic force like in Star Wars, or is he a personal being like us? Well, since we're personal and relational beings, wouldn't the one who created us also be personal and relational?
Dude, do I need to actually debunk this? Do I need to prove how, like, something that doesn't have emotions can create something that does? Or how something stupid can create something intelligent? Because I, what? Like, we've actually proven that both of these are possible. So, what?
Many scientists, like Arthur L. Shavlov, professor of physics at Stanford University and winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics, believe that these new discoveries provide compelling evidence for a personal God. He writes, "It seems to me that when confronted with the marvels of life in the universe, one must ask why and not just how. The only possible answers are religious. I find a need for God in the universe and in my own life."
So, since I feel that I've already demonstrated that your argument is pointless, let me describe to you something a little different. Why do you matter in a universe without God? Well, do you care about your family? Do you not want to die? Do you feel your possessions matter to you? That's a form of meaning. And it's a form of meaning that exists whether God exists or not. True, you don't have intrinsic value. But if it did, then no one would be willing to murder each other. And that's clearly not the case. We don't have intrinsic value. We have value assigned to us by each other and ourselves. And that can give us meaning in a universe without God.
If God is personal, and since He has given us the ability to communicate, wouldn't we expect Him to communicate with us and let us know why we are here?
You're right. If your God exists, I would definitely expect him to do that. The problem is that he doesn't do it in any way that's verifiable, provable, meaningful, or anything else. So far, everything he's done can be done by a mental disorder.
Well, as we've seen, science is unable to answer questions about God and the purpose for life.
You're totally right. We can't prove anything about something that we can't prove exists, does anything, or falsify and, fails to do anything. And the purpose for life is irrelevant because there is none, essentially. The purpose that we have as living beings is created entirely by ourselves, whether there is a God or not. Because if God assigns us a meaning, it's a task. It's not a meaning. It might be a purpose, but it's not the kind of purpose you're looking for.
However, since the Bible was right about creation from nothing, might it also be trustworthy regarding God, life, and purpose?
Well, considering that the Bible is supposedly the Word of God, and therefore infallible, except when it's not, because God can lie, um, it should accurately describe the universe, right? Right? It doesn't at all, ever. And the fact that it gets every testable claim wrong and its morality is fucked up beyond belief. It supports slavery, it supports genocide, it supports an unbelievable number of other things. I really don't understand where this argument's coming from. If 1 plus 1 equals 2, that does not mean 2 plus 2 equals 1 or anything else. Okay? And even then, you're saying 1 plus 1 equals God, therefore 2 plus 2 equals 1, which it doesn't at all.
2,000 years ago, a man set foot on our planet who claimed to have the answer to life. Although his time on Earth was brief, his impact changed the world and is still felt today.
Muhammad!
His name is Jesus Christ.
Ah, come on, you didn't even read the script. Ugh. Look, dude, every single point that you made in here, even if we were to believe you, wouldn't point to Christianity. Because all three of the primary holy books, the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible, all make basically the same claim that you do. And honestly speaking, because of the fact that almost everything in the Quran is a dictation, something for you to do rather than a tale, it's actually more accurate than the Bible. The few testable claims there are still all wrong, but there's less of them. So it takes less assumptions to believe in the Quran.
The eyewitnesses to Jesus Christ tell us that he continually demonstrated creative power over nature's laws. They tell us he was wise, humble, and compassionate. He healed the lame, deaf, and blind. He stopped raging storms instantly, created food creation began. For it was through him that everything was made, whether spiritual or material, seen or unseen.
Yeah, I'm sorry for what happened with the sound. I don't actually know why or how that ended up happening. I think there's a little bit more left of silence with just the text, but fortunately he made his video where almost everything is on screen, so I can still debunk it. Um, right here though, he's claiming that Jesus is God. which is absolutely laughable. The chance that a human would even be able to hold the power of a cosmic being is laughable as well. Although, why would he care about humanity? Why? If he cared about humanity, we would be able to explore the cosmos. We would be the species. But within the next few billion years, basically any chance of us doing anything important will go away. Unless we invent faster than light travel, the vast majority of the universe will go unexplored, unpopulated, and remain dead. Unless there's aliens, in which case, why isn't he the god of the aliens? They're probably cooler than us, and there were billions of years in the past that he could occupy. Oh, wait, it's because of a superstition where he supports the Israelites. My bad. Yeah, he even chooses races and humans.
And it was necessary for him to rise from the dead so that we too could have life after death.
So an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent creator of everything needed a human sacrifice in order to forgive people for something he caused to happen. Yep, that totally sounds like the beacon of purpose and the meaning of life that you're proposing.
As the creator, Jesus certainly would have power over life and death.
So you think it logically follows that because I created a program on the computer that I control everything about the program, even when I'm playing as a character in the program, which wasn't designed to have that?
And those closest to him claim they saw him alive after he died and was buried for 3 days.
Yep, because 40 to 80 years, the gap between the story supposedly happening and it being written down doesn't matter. The fact that people hallucinate doesn't matter. And the fact that they were close friends, meaning they'd be willing to lie for the guy, that doesn't matter either. Let's see. The fact that there's actually some pretty brilliant staging going on in this time period, especially in Egypt. But, Rome had it as well. Wait. How about the fact that we can't prove Jesus existed at all? The closest to definitive proof that we have for Jesus' existence is letters that reference his brother. But, oh, wait, those can't be verified either because they don't reference him, and there's no evidence they were ever actually sent for that purpose.
If they were wrong, then Christianity's been founded upon a lie. But if they were right, such a miracle would substantiate all Jesus said about God, himself, and us.
Well, there you have it. Christianity was substantiated on a lie. Well done, everyone. Job complete.
But must we take the resurrection of Jesus Christ by faith alone, or is there solid historical evidence? Several skeptics began investigations into the historical record to prove the resurrection account false. What did they discover? Let me invite you to click on the link below to take a closer look at the evidence for the most fantastic claim ever made, the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead.
Here, let me save you a lot of time watching that video, trying to answer the question yourself with your own research or anything else. Yeah, Jesus has no verifiable record of ever existing. I already stated this earlier, but yeah, no, there's no proof. And even if he was a guy and was crucified, which, again, the Romans kept very good track of those kinds of things, that doesn't mean he revived from the dead. So, no, you have to take that entirely on faith. Zero evidence. Thank you all for watching. This is Black Heaven, signing out. Except I'm not, because I want to give a more personal thank you to all of you. This is only my second video, and it's probably not going to get many views or likes or subscribers, but I want to know that this has been a fun ride. It's been great. I'm going to keep making videos like this. I hope to see you at a future date. And I hope that when you see me, it gives you hell.
When you're the fool, I'm just as well up against you. When you hear this song, I hope that it will give you